Today we got to talk about Michael Jeffrey Jordan, y'all, in the Last Dance documentary. We're going to get into a little bit of LeBron James and how they compare as far as their career so far, who I think is the GOAT, and how old people be lying. You know we got to talk about it next on the Yeah I Said It podcast. The Michael Jordan documentary came out about, 4 or 5 weeks ago. So it goes through the whole entire season of the 1998 season. It's called The Last Dance. But we got to get into this old people be lying stuff. So you hear a lot of different commentators talking about back in the day and how they used to play and the difficulties of playing back then versus today, which is true to an extent. You're saying that they played tougher. I understand that. You can see that in the documentary. Like, fouls really weren't fouls. Like, that's how I grew up playing basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times when we was playing on the court and I'm playing with my brother and I'm playing with people that's all older than I am, if you ain't bleeding, it ain't a foul. I don't see no blood, it ain't no foul. So don't be calling these ticky-tack fouls out here. And that's pretty much how the NBA was. You know, that's what we grew up on. That's all we knew. So they're telling the truth about that to a certain extent, you know. But the things that they lie about, and when people are trying to compare LeBron versus Jordan or today's athlete versus then, the biggest lie and misconception is they were not friends. I know you've heard Skip Bayless and Stephen A. and Michael Wilbon, all guys that I respect, but y'all lying out here, bro. Y'all lying. It shows you in the very first episode, I think that was the first episode, is when Michael Jordan went to the playoffs. By the way, they only won 30 games. How you only win like 30 some odd games and make the playoffs is beyond me. But they go to the playoffs and they play the Boston Celtics in the first round, and he's golfing with Danny Ainge, who's on the Boston Celtics, and they're friends. They cool to this day. So to sit here and tell us they weren't friends, it's just not true. It's not right. And then they try to judge this generation's basketball players with that standard when it wasn't a true standard in the first place. If you think all these players is out here and they weren't cool or they weren't friends or they didn't hang out, it's just a flat out lie. And it's insulting and it's wrong to do to new players like that. So from here on out, you're not going to hear these commentators now saying that they weren't friends. Now, certain teams didn't like each other because they made it more of a rivalry. Like, hey, it was more of a competitive thing, right? I don't like you. I ain't got to shake your hand after the end of the game. And we got to get into that too. So you go in a little bit further down on into the documentary when Jordan's Bulls finally overcame Isaiah Thomas and his team because he was losing. We got to be honest. They talk about it in the documentary. They don't really go in depth on how and how long he was losing to them. They go into the Pistons portion of it, but they didn't go into the Celtics portion of it that much. They didn't go into the Lakers portion of that much because the Lakers and Boston were the ones that were winning all the championships in the 80s until the very end, where Isaiah Thomas and his team finally came to a point to where they can win championships and overcome those two teams to win championships. These teams back then in the 80s, those were two super teams. And that's why I kind of give Isaiah Thomas the utmost respect, because he beat two super teams. He beat the Celtics and he beat the Lakers to win his chips. And if you're beating these people in their primes in the 80s and you taking chips from them, you're a bad boy. Which, how he's ranked in their ESPN top, I think they got him 31 in their top 75 basketball players, NBA basketball players of all time. I got a video about that one too, coming up pretty soon, coming out. But how they have him ranked 31 and John Stockton is ahead of him, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. When he beat them, he didn't shake their hands. And then you go back and you see when Isaiah Thomas is like, hey, when we beat the Celtics, this is how it was. We beat the Celtics. They walk off the court while we're still shooting free throws. The game is not over. They didn't shake hands with us at all. They just walked off the court. And then me and Mikal boys, again, they were friends. You know what I'm saying? You got to think about this. Everybody playing basketball at a young age, they're going to have some type of relationship with each other because they're going through the same things and have the same hardships as you most of the time. So to pretend like they weren't friends is just not true. But he grabbed Mikal, and Mikal, gave him some dap, and he walked off the court. And he said, well, that's how I thought you're supposed to do things. Basically, is what he's saying is when the new champ has arrived, he's the king now, I'm supposed to get my ass off the court. Basically is what he's saying. And that's how I was taught it's supposed to go. We lose, we get the hell off the court. It's their court. Whether I'm at home or away, I get the hell off the court. Because it ain't my time no more. I lost, I got to come back again another day. But now how we view things is, hey, that's bad sportsmanship, that's messed up. MJ was mad at him because of that, and therefore they left him off the team, off the dream team, which that was wrong too. Yeah, I got to tell the truth about that. Another thing that you guys have to tell the truth about is when great players win championships and when great players make it to championships, stop acting like Jordan did it all by himself. Listen, I'm old enough. I'm 34 years old. I'm old enough to have seen both of these guys play. Michael Jordan is my man. Michael Jordan is the reason why I started watching basketball. Him and my father. My father, we used to actually watch games together. My father loves Dr. J, and he loves him some Michael Jordan. But if you probably ask him who better, he'll just go, I don't know, because his boy is, Dr. J. But Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan. He was the first of his kind as far as worldwide fame. He was everything. He was the game for a lot of people because they didn't really know the game. He was the first basketball player to be marketed as more than just a basketball player. I'm marketed as I am what greatness is. And you want to be like me because I am what greatness is. And that's actually still going through today. And I think you see that now, like people aren't realistic about what his legacy is. A few years of Phil Jackson telling him like, hey bro, you can't do this by yourself. And if you're watching the documentary, in the first part of the documentary, they talk about Doug Collins. And Doug Collins is like, hey, if he's the greatest basketball player that I've seen to this point, and let's be real, he was. Nobody was athletically on his level, and nobody else came along to be athletically on that level until when Kobe came. So, like, as far as athletically and the things that he can do, the first person that we saw was Kobe is the next guy up. Nobody else was athletically as gifted as MJ. Doug Collins is telling you in the very first part of the documentary, hey, I'm just going to give him the ball and I'm going to just do what I do. And Jordan like, yeah, he put the ball in my hands. That's my boy. I got the ultimate green light. It's a lot like how James Harden is today. He got the ultimate green light. He can do whatever he wants to do on that court as far as shooting that ball. I ain't got to pass it to nobody else because I'm the best player on this team. And everybody on the team realized he was the best player from first practice. And that's okay. You can realize that and understand that. But you also have teammates. And this is another thing that people don't like to talk about. And when I say this, I'm not going to just say people. I'm going to just say Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless is wrong for this. To sit there and act like Michael Jordan did all this by himself and he made all of these players, that's just not true and that's not right. What you saw was Jordan's leadership in his documentary and how he chose to lead. And you can criticize it now because a lot of people are just very thin-skinned nowadays. A lot of the stuff that he said, I wouldn't be able to take that because me and him gonna fight. And that's what Jordan wanted. He wanted to see what kind of fighter, what kind of heart you had. Basically, he was testing your mettle. That's the kind of leader he was. I don't mind those type of people, but I'm gonna let you know, and you ain't gonna never disrespect me again. The thing I want to get to is Jordan passed the ball to other players to help him win championships. I'm old enough to have seen it, witnessed it, and I was a Bulls fan. And I'm still a Bulls fan. Evidence through the hat. Now, Scottie Pippen, he's telling you, if there is no Scottie Pippen, I don't win any championships. It's basically like, when you think Michael Jordan, you have to think Scottie Pippen. Because if you don't, I don't exist. I can't happen. That's how great and good he was. And the fact that he was willing to take a back seat. He could do more. He can do everything. He was really like the first point forward where he can handle the ball because he started out at a certain height and he was working on his skills because he's thinking he's going to be a guard, and then you grow to be 6'8" in 2 short years. Hell, I still got those skills. I'm just taller and I can pass and I can see above everybody like I'm Magic Johnson. You need teammates. And John Paxson, Craig Hodges, these people that he went, and another false misconception. They made it like Jordan made all the game-winning shots. It's just not true. We got to be honest about this. He made game-winning shots. Don't get it twisted. He'll pull that trigger. Jordan is the type of basketball player that he'll shoot through any slump that he has, and that's okay, but that's the way he chose to do it. Now, you got other players such as LeBron and other players that if I'm not having a good game, I'm not going to keep shooting. I got other skills where I can impact the game in other ways. You got Jordan in this documentary telling you, we go to the huddle. Another thing that Skip likes to say that he told Kerr that I'm going to pass you the ball. He told Paxson that I'm going to pass you the ball. That's not what happened. For the first championship, they were losing. Okay, they lost game 1 because Jordan got his ass tore out. They didn't go over that in depth in the first game, in the documentary. Game 1, Jordan got his ass tore out because Magic was too big. Let's be honest. I understand it's a documentary about Jordan, but if y'all gonna tell the story, tell the whole story. Okay, Magic tore a hole in his ass. He's too big for him to guard. Let that sink in for y'all. He's too big for him to guard. So they switched Pippen on him, and it changed the dynamics of the entire series because Pippen is bigger. He's just as fast, if not faster than Magic Johnson. And I'm gonna guard you full court. MJ in the documentary said, like, I knew what he was going to do because he does it all the time in practice, and it's working. Because by the time they get the ball down, hey, it's only 15 seconds left on the clock. It's only 16 seconds left on the shot clock. You got to hurry up and get into your stuff. And they're not that type of offense. They're a type of offense that James Worthy was the leading scorer. And apparently he was hampered during his finals. They didn't get into that either. And that's okay. I'm not the greatest at everything. I can't guard everybody. And you got to know that. You got to be realistic when you're talking about it. I'm realistic. And for the longest time, Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player I'd ever seen. And nobody can tell me nothing. Period. So, I love this documentary. This documentary was awesome. I just wish they had gotten into a little bit deeper into certain things. And so to give people perspective when they're talking about Michael Jordan and being realistic in the perspective. Yes, so they beat the Lakers, but during that series, Phil Jackson, they came to close out the series. They're not having a great game, and they come to the huddle. Phil goes off, and he says, Jordan, who's open? And he said, Paxson's open. He said, well, pass him the damn ball then. If you've seen the documentary, you know this is exactly what happened. So he started passing the ball. Paxson finishes with 20 points. They win the first championship. And that is the point where people say Jordan started to become the greatest ever, because he started to understand that I have teammates and I can't do this by myself. I never have been able to do this by myself. I didn't get to this point doing this by myself. I have to have teammates. Nobody does it by itself. I don't care how great you are. Overall, the documentary was awesome. They talked a little bit about when Jordan retired the first time. And this is my theory from what I'm seeing from the documentary. He didn't really he got into it a little bit from people trying to say the gambling thing and all that. I just believe his friend that was in the documentary told you, or one of his people that's close to him told you, after he won his second championship, I saw him. He said he looked very tired. He looked a little, a little weak. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? You all right? He's like, yeah, I'm all right. And he says, Jordan proceeds to tell me that I'm about to hang him up. Like, this is a lot to keep going back and doing this. And keep trying and trying and trying to be great and being great and winning these championships, but it's taking its toll on me, man. Like, I can't I can't do this for like 5 more years. I don't know if I can do this another year. I'm going to retire and I'm going to go play baseball. He told him this a year before he retired, like after his second championship. Why don't we believe him? If he's telling you this is what he told me. Because even Steve Kerr and all the people that was in this documentary, we talked to Jordan like, hey man, is this all right? Is this cool for us to do? And Jordan said, yeah. I can tell it all. Tell it all. Go ahead. It is who I am. It is what it is, man. Now you say something that I disagree with, they're going to show it to me. I'm going to tell you I disagree. So if this guy is sitting here telling you that he told me a year before he did this that I'm going to retire, believe that man. That man, what he got to lie for now? It's over and done with. I'm telling you, he told me that he was going to quit a year before and he was going to go play baseball, and he did it. But after he won that third championship, he didn't see his father passing away nobody can foresee that, like his dad passing away in the middle of his prime or right at the time where decided he was going to do that. I just think his father passing away just gave him more ammunition to go ahead and step away from everything, because I feel like he just really needed that time, because at this point, he is Michael Jordan. He is Michael Jeffrey Jordan, right? You got to think about it. Mike Tyson went to jail. He had lost. Mike Tyson was the biggest thing in sports. It's not MJ, not Magic. Mike Tyson, the heavyweight champion of the world, is always the biggest thing in sports at that time. So Michael Jordan is the biggest thing in sports, period. Nobody's even close, right? And it takes its toll. Like, he can't do things. He can't go to the movies. He can't just walk around the mall. I can't just hang out with the fellas, because he's just a regular dude, man. Like, bro, I'm just like you. I just play basketball on TV. For him, he's like, I'm done with this. And he walked away. I was already planning on doing this. My father just passed away. I ain't gotta do this, man. I'm done. I could see. I literally think that's really what happened. Like, he just was like, man, my dad just died. I just don't want to do this. And then he's like, yeah, I used to talk to my dad about playing baseball all the time. He wanted me to go ahead and do it. He's like, hey man, do what you want to do. And he did. And I think it brought him a little bit of peace playing baseball. I think it brought him a little bit of peace playing baseball. And he threw his all at it. And then he came back to basketball. And then he won 3 more championships. And he needed teammates to win those championships. Which is awesome. Now, when you're comparing, and I just saw this, now that this documentary is over, you have a lot of younger people from the younger generation just watch this documentary because we are all on quarantine and there's nothing else for you to watch for the most part. There's no documentary on LeBron James or James Harden or Tim Duncan or, there's nothing else on TV for sports heads to watch. You're watching this documentary and you're noticing and you're learning about his greatness and what he was able to do. The first thing that people want to do is attach Jordan to LeBron James. Okay, now this is my thing about going over the greatest basketball player of all time. You are entitled to your opinion. You can say however you feel. If you feel that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, go right ahead. If you feel that LeBron James, like I do, is the greatest basketball player of all time, go right ahead. But just none of this is a fact. Even Michael Jordan himself said, I cannot say that I'm the greatest basketball player of all time when I haven't played against Oscar Robertson, or I haven't played against the greats of the past, or I didn't get to play against Dr. J, or I can't play against even players now. I can't play against Kobe in his prime when he learns all of these things that I'm teaching him. I can't play against LeBron James. I can't do these things. It's not possible for me to say that I'm the greatest of all time. Just call me the greatest to ever play in my generation. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. And I feel like that's what we should do instead of trying to compare the generations, because it's impossible for us to do. Because you got Bill Russell sitting there and you got Will Chamberlain sitting there with his own record book, averaging 50 points in the season, 40 points in the season, 37 points in the season, and he also led the league in assists. But people are like, oh, there were only 8 teams in the league. That's not his fault. I cannot battle a whole generation because things changed. That is not for me. That's not a battle for me to fight. I'm the greatest in my generation. Bill Russell, I'm the greatest in my generation. Now, those two players you can compare because they played against each other. And then when you see Wilt's stats against Russell and you see Russell's stats, but you're like, Wilt is balling. It's a lot like how LeBron is right now. Like, LeBron James is leading in every statistical category and he's losing. And we're sitting up here saying, like, bro, LeBron's still the best player in the league, but Steph won, man. You got to give it to him. You understand what I'm saying? So you cannot compare generations because it's not their fault that I was born when I was born and I played in the 80s. You see what I'm saying? Or you can't blame Michael Jordan because in the 80s, I wasn't able to beat all of these players in the 80s. I'm one of the greatest players from the 80s in those 6 years or 5 years. Because I think he came in 84. In those 6 years that I played, 5 years, 6 years, that I played, I'm not the greatest basketball player in the 80s. I'm one of them. Now, the 90s, it ain't no question. I'm the greatest basketball player to ever do it in the 90s. The 2000s, I can't say that. Another thing for the generation, for people who are literally very, very young, that was born in 2000, okay? You guys don't know this, but Jordan's career did not end on that shot. Okay? He did come back and he played with the Wizards, and he averaged about 22 points the first year, 20 points the second year, which is still phenomenal and awesome. And I loved every second of it because I'm a Jordan head, I'm a Jordan fiend, you know. And they're not going into the detail of that, which I hope and pray that they come out with a Kobe Bryant documentary, because they can talk about the game where Jordan was talking stuff to him and he said, you ain't gonna never fill my shoes. So Kobe went out the next game that they played each other and dropped 50 on his head, and Jordan couldn't say nothing about it because Jordan, I ain't got that same ability, bro. I got the attitude, but I ain't got that same ability no more. Like, I can't run with you, I can't jump with you. I'm just not the same player. But that's not Kobe's fault. Now, when we're talking about the greatest player of all time, you guys have to put it in categories. I feel that you need to put it in categories of greatest players of the 80s, greatest players of the 90s, greatest players of the 2000s, and beyond. Okay? We can't definitively say that Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time because we're judging it on 6 championships. And people are like, well, he could have won 8 championships. We don't know that. We can't talk about what ifs. Because if we talk about what ifs, what if LeBron won all the championships that he lost? What if he didn't have a bad finals versus the Mavericks? If we doing what ifs, you can't do what ifs. Shannon Sharp says that all the time. If we doing what ifs, anybody can do what ifs. What if Kobe got 10 championships? Anybody can do that. But we got to talk about what is, not what you think it could have been, you know. And 2, he did come back, and they did in the middle of the 90s. He did come back in the middle of the 90s, and he lost to the Orlando Magic. That's a real thing. It happened, okay? As a Jordan fan, for me, this was awesome. I enjoyed every second of it. Every morsel, I soaked it in, okay? I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that I didn't enjoy it, because I did. But I want to say one last thing. In order to say or to prove a point about that who you think is the greatest of all time, you ain't got to denigrate the other basketball players. Okay? You don't have to do that. Just state what his greatness is, and you say, hey, what did your player do in this situation that you say is the greatest basketball player of all time? That's it for me, man. I just got to get that out. I'm definitely going to do a LeBron James versus Michael Jordan comparison as far as career stats, the players that they played against, the teams they beat for those championships, because I didn't even get into that. Um, things like that, which is important if you're going to try to blend their the generations here. If you're going to try to blend the generations, then we'll try to do that on the next episode. But for now, this is it for me. I appreciate you guys for joining me. Support me. Support. I appreciate it. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you don't like what I gotta say, fight me about it. What's up? I'm ready to square with these words with anybody. You know, I got words for all of y'all. I ain't scared. I said that shit. What's up?